Welcome to the African Institute of Leadership and Governance this morning. I'm coming to you from my office, and I'm going to share a few important things. But for now, it's a new month and a new day. So let us just wake up and celebrate It's Africa Arise one more time. Yeah, enjoy this music. Let the world come and taste this beautiful land. My Africa, rise up. Oh, Africa, rise up. I love my Africa, rise up. My mother Africa, rise up. We are one Africa, together. Lifting Africa, rise up. I love my Africa, rise up. Beautiful Africa, rise up. I'm so happy to be a part of this continent. Call your sisters and your brothers and your friends. Let's get together, let's hold hands and let us dance. Let's unite and give ourselves another chance. As they walk out for road, we will see many things, everything. The happy people, the jolly. Oh yeah, dance, let Africa be good. And in the sun or the rain or the sweet or the pain, we still get together. Because let Africa be good. Oh, Nelson Mandela, Lupita Nyong'o, oh, Desmond Tutu, let Africa be good. Oh, Barack Obama, Kwame Nkrumah, all my freedom fighters. Mama di, mama di, mama di, mama di, mama di, yeah. Everybody, go jolly party in Africa, yeah. Sorry for that breaking in transmission. This was due to network, and but we are back, and I'm going to speak very shortly on the Africa we want. And creating the Africa we want, it requires a certain vibe from the young people, old, and everybody to get up and just say, hey, this is the Africa that we need, and this is where we want our continent to go. So I will quickly just speak to us. Well, this is your friend and brother Emmanuel Nkhoma, and so we are celebrating this month, the month of April, which we have just started. And so let me know where you are catching me from. I believe that we need to conversate on a number of important issues that surrounds our continent, a number of important issues that surrounds us. So this morning, let me know where you are and let me know who's on. I'm not conducting the class this morning. I just want to welcome you to the new month and speak a little bit on the Africa we want. I believe there is a dream that an African child has somewhere. I believe there is so much hope that the African people are having to say, can these things change? Can we get ourselves to another level? And so, wherever you are watching me from and wherever you are tuned in from, I want just to welcome you and I want just to speak with you right now and right away. Give me a second as we uh, uh, continue in our broadcast this morning and in our transmission this morning. I believe that this is very important for us to do this morning, giving ourselves a vibe on how do we start? How do we look forward? Where do we go from here now? So many of us may lose hope when we look at a number of things, but this morning, I just want to say something quickly as we celebrate. It's also a Friday, so let's celebrate a bit. Rise up, Africa. Everybody, the jolly party in Africa, yes. To the west, where the flag up in the air. From the north to the south, I'm an African girl in a color. I love my Africa. Oh, Africa, rise up. I love my Africa. Rise up, I love Africa. Rise up, we are one Africa. Rise up, little Africa. Rise up, I love my Africa. Rise up, beautiful Africa. Rise up, I love my Africa. Rise up, oh Africa, rise up. I love my Africa. Rise up, I love the Africa. Rise up, we are one Africa. Little Africa, rise up. I love my Africa. Rise up, beautiful Africa. Beautiful Africa. Wow, beautiful Africa indeed. I love my Africa. Sometimes I always tell myself that there is no better continent to be born in than that which is of Africa. Africa is a continent that everything is found, and it's a continent that we can talk about in many words. And we find a lot of things in Africa, much more. The beautiful people of Africa, the beautiful people of Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, this morning, those of you that are tuned in and you are joining me right away and right now, I want to say to you, welcome once again. I hope that you are with us and we are looking at a number of issues this morning, which has been a serious issue on our continent. And one of them in the past 3 years has been the pandemic that has gone through. The COVID-19 pandemic was just a very strong wake up call to the continent, was a wake up call to our leadership, was a wake up call to our social life, was a wake up call to many things as African people. And now we are seeing life getting back to normal. And remember, in 2020, I did a teaching when leaders are confused. I did a teaching on when leaders are confused. And that was a very serious discussion because after that, many people called me and asked me a lot of questions. To what do I allude to when I say when leaders are confused? Can leaders really be confused? Oh, yes, our leaders can be confused, can be confused. Now, the Africa we want
is that Africa that creates, like I've said, the Africa that creates opportunities for all, the Africa that does not favor the children of those that are called the elite compared to those that are ordinary citizens of this great continent. Now, I want us to look at the map of Africa shortly by me making this statement, and let me state this categorically that the map of Africa is shaped in a shape of a gun when you turn it on the other side. So it's a very powerful weapon. On the straight side, when you look at it, it's also shaped in a walking stick. So Africa is going somewhere. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Haven't you realized why there was scramble for Africa? Where the continents and the superpowers of the day were fighting to get hold of Africa. Belgium came in, England came in, Germany. You know, we have seen all these superpowers, France came in. So we saw all these superpowers fighting for Africa. Why? Because there is something that is in Africa, which we, the African people, need to begin to treasure, and which we, the African people, need to begin to look at. Right now, we have also looked at how Africa operates, and we have said to ourselves, guys, if this continent has to move forward, there is need of self-awareness, and there is need of us beginning to appreciate and beginning to look at our continent to say, how do we therefore improve on that which we already have? How do we improve on that which we already have? Because I believe strongly that this great continent with the great people need to get to self-awareness, where we can begin to appreciate and begin to, all right, I'm sorry about that, but I'm saying that we need to begin to look at what we need to improve on in our continent. Is it the areas of leadership? You know, leadership has been a very big problem in our continent. Leadership has been a very big problem. Let me not call it a problem, but let me call it a challenge. I said and I indicated at one particular time that our continent has a very big opportunity for emerging leaders. I want to appreciate great sons of the continent like Tony Emulemu, those that are rising up and saying, let us see what can be done in our continent. Because self awareness brings self worth. Self awareness brings self worth. What made our fathers, our founding fathers, to fight tooth and nail over this continent was nothing else but them realizing the worthiness of our continent, the great deposits of our continent. That is what made our leaders, our forefathers, to fight tooth and nail over these precious soils. But today we look at why we have leaders, why we have the leaders fighting for all these things, and yet we don't see the great results. Why we don't see the great results? It's simply because we have a leadership vacuum. Most of our leaders that we call leaders today are those that are looking for opportunities, are those that are looking for opportunities. And friends and colleagues, opportunities they come and opportunities they go. But one of the things that I've always said is that if our African leaders are inspired by need, if our African leaders are inspired by need, our African leaders are inspired by passion, our African leaders are inspired by patriotism, then we can see the Africa we want. I have said this before, that the Africa that Kenneth Kaunda, the Africa that Kwame Nkrumah fought for, the Africa that Patrice Lumumba died for, the Africa that Julius Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere were fighting for, the Africa that Samora Machel died for, the Africa that we speak about is not the Africa we are living in today. Why do I say so? Because the Africa that our forefathers dreamed was not just the Africa that will bring political freedom. The Africa that our forefathers risked their lives for was not just an Africa that will bring political liberation from the colonial masters. What they were fighting for really was to see to it that an African child has a stake in the economy. An African child has a stake in the economy. But what are we seeing today? What are we seeing today? What we are seeing today is that we have leaders that have gotten into power by the people, leaders that have gotten into power by the people through the vote of the people, but their ambition is not really to better the lives of the people that put them into power. Their ambition is to get their families somewhere else. Haven't you wondered why that an African is so excited to go to Dubai than they are excited to explore our own continent? Haven't you wondered why our African leaders are investing offshore? Our African leaders are buying investments outside this continent and feel so proud to go and build a house and buy a house in London. Why can't we build those mansions in our continent? Why can't we build those mansions in our land? Let me say this, the greatest resource that we will ever have is human resource. The greatest resource that we will ever have is human resource. That is why in the corporate governance, we speak about human resource. We speak about personnel management. We speak about personal resource. Why? Because the greatest asset your company can have, it's not money. The greatest asset your community can have, it's nothing else but, listen to this, nothing else but human capital. So it is important for me to come to you this morning and remind you that Africa is great. In order for Africa to arise, its people must begin to realize their worth. What is the worth of Africa? Again, let me reiterate for the sake of sensitization. For the sake of sensitization, let me reiterate this and state to you categorically. Did you realize that the most fertile land on the planet Earth is found in Africa, in the land of Equatorial Guinea? Did you realize that the best beef on the earth comes from Botswana? Did you realize the best coppers comes from Zambia? The best emeralds are in Africa. Did you realize that the best diamonds comes from Kimberley, South Africa? Did you realize that the best cocoa comes from Ghana and Guinea? Did you realize the best corn comes from Africa? Did you realize that the best gold comes from Africa? Did you realize that Cotas comes from Congo DRC? Did you realize the most fresh waters comes from Africa? And if we have all these resources, then why do we treat ourselves worthless? So what has to happen is that the Africa we want, governance therefore, teaches us that to govern is to distribute the resource that are given to us to the people. Therefore, it has to do with distribution and management. How do we manage these resources? And how are these resources being distributed? Not too long ago, I just got to discover of a tree that they spoke about. I don't know the English name, but this is a tree that they called in Zambia mukula tree, and they are exporting it. They were exporting it to China, and China uses this tree in manufacturing. China uses this tree in many other substances. But for us in Africa, we grew them naturally, and we looked at them and we just said, oh, hey, there goes a tree growing up. There goes a tree growing up, not knowing its treasure. So the Africa we want is that Africa that creates equal opportunities. The last thing that I want to speak about, which I want us to begin to conversate on in this month of April, is decolonization of our Africa's education. Decolonization of our Africa's education. Why do we need to decolonize our education sector? It's because an African educated person has been taught on how things are done, not how things are made. An African educated person is told how to brew coffee, and they are not told on how to process coffee from coffee beans to producing the real coffee. An African educated person in forestry has been taught to name the parts of the tree, and they are not told on what the tree can do. So an African geologist has been educated on what minerals are found in Africa, and they are not told what to use those minerals for. You know why Putin in Russia has become very strong, and others call him stubborn? It's because he realizes their worth. Haven't you realized that since Putin realized his worth and began to do what he's doing, what has happened is that we have seen prices of things go up. We have seen America shaken. We have seen France shaken. Why? Because we know that somebody has realized their self-worth. So, ladies and gentlemen, I came to remind you today, Africa, arise, and let's begin to deal with our continent jealously. Let's begin to guard our continent jealously. And I want to say also categorically to us tonight and this morning that as we start this month, let us look at what we need to do to find the solution. Let our leaders stop corruption, the corruption of enriching themselves, the corruption of enriching their girlfriends, the corruption of building mansions for their cousins and their wives, and taking their children offshore and having bank accounts everywhere. And they call that governance. That is not governance, that is theft. That is not governance, that is theft. Shall we emulate men, gallant men who loved this continent passionately, like Muammar Gaddafi, who said, I will not build a house for my mother until every Libyan has got shelter over his roof, over his head? Won't we emulate leaders like that made sure that every child is given an opportunity to get to school? Won't we emulate men and women that had gone out and built universities for other people? When Kenneth Kaunda retired, he was not a billionaire, yet he had been in power for 27 years. Shall we emulate General Paul Kagame, who is building a great country of Rwanda after genocide? And we have seen the only country that drops mails by drones, the only country that is developing automobile manufacturing industries, it is Rwanda. Whilst our country leaders are busy, sunk and drunk in corruption. Our leaders are sick and have sunk their head and drunk in making sure they educate their children. Whilst our great leader, General Paul Kagame, is standing out there challenging the powers that be. We need leaders that are revolutionary minded, not leaders that are after developing their own stomachs. The greatest grave that African leaders have developed is a stomach. Haven't you wondered that most of our leaders, when they go into office, even those that did not have a pot belly, when they go into office, they develop a pot belly? Why? Because it's the greatest investment that most of our African leaders have. Today, the Africa we want is the Africa that will make an African child feel embarrassed leaving this great continent to go and seek greener pastures in Europe, to go and seek greener pastures in the West. Why? Because our leaders in Africa had said, let us make Africa a safe heaven. I love you guys. Have a pleasant weekend ahead of you. I will come back with sessions and lessons at some other time. This is your friend and brother Emmanuel Nkhoma signing off again. Remember, it's Africa's time, and let Africa arise.